The Truth of Girls.
Hi everyone, it's Sonia here. I want to talk a little bit more about the issue of the border wall. In my last video, I had said that I thought that Congress should just give Trump the funding. I want to clarify a little bit about why I said that, and also want to share with you some things I learned in the meantime about immigration, refugee status, and asylum seeking. The reason I support the wall, it doesn't have to do with the fear of immigrants. It just has to do with, it's more like what is for everyone's benefit. It's just more to do with safety, including the safety of the people who are trying to come into America, the asylum seekers. I mean, this is where I've stood on it up until now. Maybe one day I'll change my mind, but it just seemed to me that the system wasn't good and it wasn't safe for anyone. It's just a bad system. And I just believe that having a border wall would be one part of a solution, but it's just one part. And even if the wall isn't in all places, and some ranches you can't put a wall because it would cut the property, or there's some areas where they wouldn't have it, but it would contribute to a solution. But you have to look at the other areas also. So that's what I want to talk about today, about asylum and refugee status to the US. I decided to educate myself because here I am talking about the wall. What do I really know about refugees and asylum seekers in America? Just before I get into that though, I do want to say that I don't believe that the wall would stop the drug trade. Everybody knows they use tunnels and they're going to be very creative with finding ways to get their drugs over the wall. So, that's out. I think also it's possible that with the wall, the cartels might get more involved in illegal immigration themselves to earn money, that they may traffic people through the tunnels. That's another possibility. So the wall itself is not going to solve all problems, like on a humanitarian level, because you do have these people making this journey. Look, Mexico had to cancel the El Monstro train coming from Central America because so many people were dying because the Zetas, who had gotten involved in the cartel wars after the fall of El Chapo, these Zetas who were like ex-military, very dangerous people, and they were targeting the migrants coming up on El Monstro. They're not kidnapping tourists, they're kidnapping migrants, and for extortion. A lot of people were assaulted, a lot of bad things happening on the trains, people falling off, getting hurt. I mean, it was so bad that they just had to stop the train. So you can imagine like the incredibly dangerous situation that people are in when they're making this journey, which is why they get into caravans, I guess safety in numbers. And then even if you don't get assaulted and you have all those things out of the way, there is the risk of dying of, injuries or dehydration in the wilderness on your way. I mean, it's a really dangerous thing. They say, well, they have these ports of entry. So I was thinking, why don't they maybe open more ports of entry, have more staff, so that people can come to these ports and claim asylum there. Ignorant person that I was, here I was thinking this. It's actually not that simple. This is what I want to share with you. Man, is it ever complicated to get into America? And before I get into this, I'm going to address the issue. Does America have a responsibility to take in refugees and asylum seekers? No, apparently. Politically, legally, they don't. They absolutely don't. So this isn't going to be like a moral discussion about whether they should bring them in. I just want to let you know probably why people are trying to cross illegally by busting through the border instead of going through the legitimate channels. This is what I was looking into. I find interesting. Maybe you'll find it interesting too. So this is from rocketlawyer.com. It's about how to get refugee or asylum status in America. So listen to this. If you want to qualify for refugee status in America, the United States, you must meet the definitions of a refugee above, whatever they are, plus you must be referred by the UN Refugee Agency. So number one, you have to be referred by the UN Refugee Agency or the US Embassy, or you must be a member of a specified group with special characteristics in certain countries. So there's a list of priority groups. You must not be firmly resettled in another country, as in if you went through Mexico and you stayed there and you got, resident status, you can't then proceed to America. You must not be an immediate relative of a US citizen or a special immigrant. So if for some reason you have a son who's a resident, a citizen in America, then you can't come in as a refugee. That's out. And you must be living outside the United States. If you are already in the US, you may be eligible to apply for asylum. See below. So basically, to apply for asylum, all you have to do is be in the United States and then make a claim within 1 year of entering the US. That's it. On the note of asylum, there was this discussion about Jeff Sessions saying 80% of asylum seeking claims are not legit, they're refused. On closer inspection, it's actually just that 20% are approved. Another 30-something% are not approved, and the rest are just sort of, something happens and it doesn't get followed through on. It gets dropped one way or another. But basically, 20% are approved. So how about refugee, though? Why don't they just apply as refugees, right? Okay, they had to apply through the UN, get referred by the UN. We already saw that. Here is a list from the New York Times. Refugees entering the U.S. already face a rigorous vetting process. This was from 2017. Now look at what they have to do. Registration with the United Nations. Interview with the United Nations. I'm warning you, it's going to be long. Refugee status granted by the United Nations. Referral for resettlement in the United States. Now listen to this. The United Nations decides if the person fits the definition of a refugee, okay, and whether to refer the person to the United States or to another country for resettlement. Only the most vulnerable are referred, accounting for less than 1% of refugees worldwide. Some people spend years waiting in refugee camps. So remember how to apply as a refugee. And the first thing you had to do was be referred by the UN Refugee Agency. And now we have discovered that only 1% of refugees are even referred from the UN. So your chance, if you do everything right, apply as a refugee, you have less than a 1% chance of even being referred, never mind accepted. Whereas if you're an asylum seeker, assuming you survive the journey, you have a 20% chance of being granted asylum. So right there, you can see how the odds are far in your favor if you somehow cross the border. I mean, look, this isn't a moral discussion about who should be doing what, whatever, just the facts. If you were trying to flee, let's say Honduras or whatever, with your family or whatever, by yourself, you're trying to flee some very dangerous situation, and you have to wait, what, 2 years with the UN to then find out you're not part of the less than 1% to get referred for resettlement anywhere, versus you take your chance on sneaking in and you have a 20% chance of making it. What would you do? I mean, I can see why people choose that route, because they're stacking the odds in their favor. Let's say you did get with the UN and you were part of that less than 1%. Now you have interview with State Department contractors, background check, higher level background check, another background check, 3 fingerprints, screenings, case review, additional review, extensive in-person interview, Homeland Security approval, screening for contagious diseases, cultural orientation. You know what? Okay, I'll finish it. Match with an American resettlement agency, multi-agency security checks. Okay, but that stuff is all important. Let's just say it's a long process. You got to do that part. But the hard part is being in that less than 1%. And of those, then you have to go through the rest, maybe get approved. I mean, really. The only way you're going to stop people from coming through the border is if you have immigration reform. That's it. And even then, probably, they're going to keep doing it. Again, does America have an obligation? No, they don't. But does America have a problem? Well, apparently they do. I mean, if they don't want people coming in illegally, they're going to have to change something. So what's the wall going to do? Well, apparently areas that have had walls put up, so they've had their the flow of illegal, well, of asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, cut down to 10% of what it was before they had the wall. So it does cut it down. But as long as it is that hard to get in, people are going to keep trying. I think what you really need, if you really want to solve this problem as much as possible, is you need to have a lot of reforms on all levels. There needs to be something. I don't have the answers to your immigration problem, but I thought this was interesting to know a little bit more about what's going on and why there's so many people coming in like that, and actually how difficult it really is to get through. So that's it. Let me know what you think. Thanks for giving me thumbs up. Thank you for your support on Patreon. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.
The truth, the